Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Dino Joe show. Today, we've got the first episode of a brand new series, and our guest tonight is a voice actor that has worked on so many incredible projects, including Hogwarts Legacy, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Lego Star Wars, and many, many more. There's too many to mention in one go for an introduction. So, joining me live from Los Angeles is Jason Anthony. Hello,
Hello.
sir.
Hello. Brilliant.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to finally talk to you in person rather than
Yes.
TikTok messages.
Yes.
How are
Good old
you?
TikTok though. Good old TikTok.
Yeah,
I tell you, that platform that is connecting people left, right, and center, and it's fantastic. And I love that we got connected on TikTok and can spend this time together.
yeah, absolutely. I can see the lovely view of Los Angeles in your background as well. It's just as sunny as I imagined.
Isn't it? Look. It's crazy. I moved out to LA and I spend most of my time in a padded studio with no windows.
I can't think of anything better, to be honest with you. It almost feels like I'm in one of your TikToks right now.
Yeah, right. This is where it all happens. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is where it all happens.
For those in the chat that have just joined us, welcome to the show. Tonight we are joined by Jason Anthony. For those who don't follow Jason's TikTok, you can scan the QR code just underneath Jason there and it will take you straight to it.
Oh, look at
I
that.
imagine you probably all are, as there are 1.3 million of them. So there is a good chance that people here are already subbed. And if there is any questions that you would like to ask Jason, we will dive into them a little bit later. So fire them away throughout the show and we will dive into them a bit later.
Yeah.
So Jason, I'd like to start by asking you how you got yourself to LA and your rise to being in the position you're in now. Because from my understanding, you actually started as a host on the Disney Channel.
Yeah, yeah. And trust me, voice acting wasn't even on my radar remotely. I probably, if I'm truthful, I probably didn't even know it was a thing when I started. You know, I just hadn't heard of voice actors. So my whole thing was, I knew I wanted to do something in entertainment because I was just geared that way from a teenager and school plays and stuff like that. And I did leave it late. I got into my 20s and really sort of brushed it aside and thought, that was school. Now
Yeah.
it's out into the real world kind of thing, So I fought it for a long time, and then a very good friend of mine she was an agent in the entertainment industry. I had no connections whatsoever, no family members, no friends, anything other than this person that I knew who was an agent in London. And they sort of recognized as our friendship grew, like, you've got something, you really should, have you ever thought, and this was diving in at the deep end, have you ever thought about going to LA? Because a lot of people I work with, they're going to LA, and I think you do really well out there. So she sort of planted that seed, and we're going back now like 2003, 2004. And I'd already done a little bit in the UK, so I had a little bit of ammunition. I had the Playhouse Disney. I'd worked and done stuff on ITV, announcing, and some on-camera stuff, and a few commercials. So I had a bit of a reel together.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was just a sort of a baptism by fire. I got sent an acting course in LA that was a 6-week course. And I thought, well, that's a good reason to go out there, because I didn't want to just turn up with my suitcase and go, hello, I'm from England. Any jobs? So it was sort of slightly sort of planned and calculated. So I went out initially for a 6-week acting course, which got me hooked into stand-up comedy. There was a part of that course was a stand-up comedy class. And so I really got bit by that bug. And I just loved LA. I instantly thought, wow, this, you can't escape the industry here. That's what's, London has an incredible theatre background, an industry, but it's very diverse. There's lots of different industries in London, whereas LA, it's all entertainment. Everyone that's here is somehow connected and wants to be here because of the industry. So I immediately loved that about it, that you were just, a conversation away from meeting somebody like-minded, creative. And we were all kind of, even when we started out doing stand-up comedy out here, we were all like very supportive. It was just this group, and you just, it's a lot of comedians that I work with have gone on to huge things in stand-up comedy, and it's lovely to see all that success as other colleagues have stayed in this industry. So yeah, that's kind of like how I got out to LA, but it wasn't easy. It is not easy. There was a lot of, visa applications, time. You can't just rush out here. So I had to get work visas, and then eventually a green card. And then finally in 2015, I got my citizenship.
Cool.
So it's a process. It can be done. Millions of people are doing it. And I'm proof of that. So,
Yeah, very much so, and not an overnight thing, as obviously you've just
no.
mentioned that some people would think. That's interesting that you were on the comic circuit,
Yes.
in the clubs. Did you take inspiration from other comics around you, or any big names, or did you bring anything from the UK with you?
I
Any
always,
inspiration?
yeah. I mean, I grew up loving the two Ronnies, Morecambe and Wise. I was very much akin to the physical side of comedy. Lee Evans was always very inspiring. Eddie Izzard, oh my God, incredible! Just so many great. And I leaned very heavily into the UK inspirations, even though I was out in LA. Peter Kay. God, love Peter Kay. All those guys, they all, sort of bled into me, and you're just trying stuff out. When you're starting stand-up comedy, you're trying to find your unique perspective and voice on things. And I think one of the things that played well for me for stand-up comedy, certainly out in America, was being a Brit in America. And just my observations alone were just like funny to American audiences. So yeah, that was great. Nearly 10 years I did that.
Really, 10 years?
Yeah. And
That's amazing.
if it wasn't for the travel and the time it takes away from your schedule, I would love to do it. There's nothing better than being on stage. I mean, trust me, it's one of those disciplines, one of those performance skills that you're on your toes every single time. You can never just rest back on your laurels. You think comedians are, you know. You look at Matt Rife now, who's huge.
Mm.
He's so good. His brain is working 1,000 beats a second, thinking of things like, but he's so laid back. You think, oh my gosh, this guy just comes on and just starts, but he's so good, that guy right now. Yeah, so I dive back onto the stage. It's just the travel, and it started to take me away from LA a lot. So I really had to sort of decide, do I really want to do the stand-up comedy, or do I want to stay in town and do voice acting? So I did the latter.
Where did that transition for you then, from being on the road, doing comedy gigs, doing stand-up? Where did that first start to transition for you? Did you get a phone call, or did you apply for any roles, do any auditions, or was it sort of your agent kind of got in touch with you and said, "Look, we've got
Yeah,
these"?
I mean, when I first came out here, I had a couple of meetings with agencies. Things are a little different now, but back in sort of 2003, 2004, people were still picking up the phone and, hey, what's up? And so I reached out to a few agents out here, and sort of, when I even came over, I had a few, hey, listen, what if scenarios. If I came out here and I had my green card, or I can work, is this something that would be interest to you? And as I say, I had enough credits at that time to know that, they knew that I was serious, and I had some good references. So it was very much that. And then when I did finally get my card, it's, as I say, it's a real leap of faith. I mean, I left my work in the UK. I rented my house out, packed my bags, and
Mhm.
you're kind of like, well, let's see how it goes. I'm here. And sure enough, the agents were true to their word, and I got here. And so they started sending me out for voiceover work, and I did some narration, and I did a few celebrity kind of TMZ style shows. And then at that same time, I was doing stand-up comedy. So that was really giving me some good stage legs, some really good foundation for comedy, which certainly in animation and now even in video games, to have that sort of comedic timing ability and a sensibility of comedy and a good comedy writing. And so I was able to sort of juggle for a while of doing a bit of voiceover and then focusing, because it was in the evening is the time when you do stand-up comedy. So it never, while I was in LA, it never affected my voiceover work because it was always the
Mhm.
evening. So once I got about 5 years into stand-up comedy, performing all over Los Angeles and Orange County, and I even did a road trip up north to Oregon and stuff like that, just getting the stage time. That was all great, but it was until I got an agent for comedy that they started flying me all over America. And that's when, even though I still loved it, that's when I really had to make a decision of I can't do both because I'm just not in LA to do the work. It takes you. This is another thing people don't realize when you get on the road doing stand-up comedy in the clubs. The clubs normally you operate Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday show, and 2 shows Saturday, or 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday. So by the time you got travel, you're traveling out on Wednesday, you're traveling back maybe Sunday night or Monday night, you're back in town for a day, and then you're possibly out again. So the schedule
Yeah.
is, that's something to really bear in mind. But, I was willing just to try everything. And that's always my motto when people ask me, how do I get into it? What do I do? It really is a case of trying all this stuff because, there's that saying, be careful what you wish for. You really don't know what that end game is until you kind of do it, or you get on your way to achieving it. So it's very much a case of just trying these things to see if, you'll know straight away if it's for you.
Yeah.
I knew that with stand-up comedy. I thought, oh my God, I'm terrified. But I knew I really want to do this. Wow, this is, what a challenge. And to make people laugh is, that's the real crown on this whole career for me, is being able to affect somebody that way, to make them laugh, Hope
Yeah.
so.
Absolutely. That contrast between a comic and the comedic timing, as you mentioned, and between animation, especially in video games, I can't think
Yeah.
of in any point for a character in a video game, there's not at least probably 50% of the dialogue that is spun to be comedic in some
Yes.
way.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was there was a lot of great comedy writing in Hogwarts Legacy, for instance. I mean, having said that, even in Call of Duty, my character Otter, I mean, he had some really, really fun lines. A little bit, curt and to the point, but his character, for Call of Duty, he was as sort of comedic as you could go in that respect. He had some very funny little quips and one-liners. But certainly, when it came round to doing Hogwarts Legacy, that was just so rich, full of characters, and there was some great writers on that project, and we really were able to flex our comedy chops on that.
Yeah, yeah, you can tell, especially with Victor Rookwood and Pete. Well, basically every character within that game is funny to an extent.
Yes,
Is
that's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you don't always have to play it comedically. You just have to recognize, and this is when when you recognize good writing, it really makes you go, "Oh gosh, I want this so bad. I want this role so bad. This is such great writing." And I think that's all that the writers and the team, back at HQ on all these projects, that's what they're hoping for. They're hoping that a performer recognizes those little beats, and can play to them and
Mhm.
pull them out as a performance.
With Call of Duty,
Yeah,
personally, I have been a lifelong player and fan of Call of Duty since I was
nice.
too young to play the game, probably.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
especially Modern Warfare and Warzone. By the
yeah.
way, I'm sure I heard your voice more than my partner's during COVID on on
Oh, you
Call of
must have heard
Duty.
me 1,000 times going, "Incoming!
Million,
Need
yeah,
more ammo!"
million, absolutely millions. What was it like when you found out you were going to be part of a huge franchise? And did you realize at the time, with it being a video game, just how massive of a franchise it is, how
No,
worldwide?
I didn't. I didn't. You know, I knew of it. I'm not from a gaming background, you know, other than my voice acting. You know, I'm not a gamer, but you know, there are certain franchises you just cannot avoid hearing and knowing about, and Call of Duty was one of those. And it was a really sort of pleasant surprise that just kept unfolding, because right at that time, I think that that game, uh, Modern Warfare 19, I mean, that I think that really changed the landscape a lot for Call of Duty. It was there was a real switch. I remember being invited to the launch, and we sat down and we were shown a cutscene of Bravo 6 team going into a house. I think it was in Notting Hill, to raid this house in Notting Hill. And I was just watching it thinking, this video or is this game video? Like what? I mean, it was so realistic. And we stormed this house, and you know, and it played through the scene, and I was just like, wow, this is going to be huge, you know. And then I saw a couple of the scenes where Piccadilly was on fire, and everyone's like, you know, and I was just like, this is insane, like this is amazing. And then, of course, on the sad side, we then went into 2020, and none of us knew, you know, what that was all going to be about. But what it did do, and I'm grateful that I was a part of that. What it did do, it provided that community a way to still share an experience in a situation where we were all trapped in our houses. And I'm sure that game would have been a big success regardless, but it had an extra boost because everyone now was at home. Everyone was starving for connection and fun and escapism, and that game was just it just landed, you know, at that time. And then Warzone came along, and you know, it was just a double whammy, you know. So it was yeah, it was an unusual time, but it was also, I think, a great time, uh, you know, for that game. And I think, like yourself, that's why I think a lot of people really had a special bond with that particular game and experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as you touch on there during the pandemic. I don't think I've ever been in an entertainment space with so many people I know all at the same time. And it was just
Yes.
it was such a weird experience, that whole game inside of COVID, because it was brilliant. And it's strange that I almost miss it in a sense
Yeah.
because of how good one the game was, the
Yeah.
connectivity of it,
Yeah.
and the humor. But it's so bizarre. Touching on COVID,
Yeah.
how did you find the pandemic? What were the changes that you had to make for your work, and how did you occupy yourself and keep yourself busy?
Yeah, it was a very interesting time because I lost my father just the February of 2020.
Oh,
So
sorry to hear that.
yeah, it was a bad year for me anyway. Um, it was a very strange year for many people, but for me personally, having just lost my dad, coming back to LA, in a strange way, and this is going to sound strange, but in a strange way, I was grieving, but I also felt that I didn't stick out in society as somebody that was grieving because everyone was in shock. Weren't necessarily grieving, but everyone was in shock. And so I felt like I had this camouflage through COVID, certainly through those first 6 months, where it was fine to to stay in. It was fine not to meet up with anyone because I certainly wasn't in a position to do that anyway. But it gave me the permission that it was okay to do that. And
Hmm.
as COVID sort of went on and on, it did help me in my grieving because, as I say, I felt protected. I felt this camouflage of COVID, um, and I threw myself into projects around the house like a lot of people did. Work. Uh, we were in the midst of production on Hogwarts Legacy, so wasn't a case of tools down. It was a case of how do we, reorganize and continue recording. And we were right in the phase of recording all the dialogue. So a lot of dialogue was recorded right here on this mic in my studio. A lot of actors were scrambling because they didn't have it. I already had this studio, so but a lot of actors didn't even have microphones, any way to record at home. But all of a sudden, we had to find a way because this production couldn't just come to a standstill. And there were a couple of other things that I was working on at the time that equally had to, scramble and reassess, production and how we were going to get through this. But I still look back at that time and just think that didn't happen. How could
I
that
know.
happen? That's just a dream I think we all had because it just seems so bizarre, and it was.
Yeah, it just seems so almost mental in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
Even the other day, I was just shopping on the way in from work in just a normal state of mind, and then I looked down at the shopping as I came in and thought, 4 years ago, I was bleaching everything in here before I put anything in the
Mhm.
fridge, and I'm
I
looking
know,
at it
I
going,
know,
"What was I thinking?" Or
I
like, "How
know.
was I?" It's just so bizarre how so
Yeah,
much has changed in so little time.
yeah, I remember that too, coming to the front of the house and then getting all the if you could get disinfectant wipes, because
Yeah,
all of a sudden that was like gold, and then we were out on the porch,
yeah,
wiping all the product down, and it was I mean, it was just mad, mad times.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and then fast forward a couple of years to last
yeah,
February, and Hogwarts Legacy is released.
yes,
What a game and the start of a new chapter for the franchise, and not
yeah.
just to be a part of it for you, but to be 20 parts of it or more than 20 parts of it. How did you
Uh,
how did you feel, and how did that become that you were gonna play so many parts within that game? Did you know you were gonna
yeah.
be playing so
No,
many when you
I
applied for it,
didn't.
or just
I
it's another
no,
one?
I yeah, I first auditioned for Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington. Right, yes, hello. So I auditioned for him first, and of course, the great John Cleese had already set a fabulous foundation for him. So I stepped into that, and I remember when we first started recording his lines. As it happens a lot with games, because there are so many characters in there. Once they get you on board, they sort of say, "Hey, listen, we're looking at a couple of other characters for you. Do you want to have a go at these characters?" And then I think the next one was Professor Binns. Now Binns, even though he'd had a mention in the books, there was um, no voice laid down at all for Binns. So that was a character. Once they said basically he's history. It's boring. He puts students to sleep. It was funny. I just instantly thought of Winston Churchill. Never in the field of human conflict. Yes, right. And I just slowed him down to here. Yes. And what was great about the freedom the guys at Avalanche gave me was great because it is a video game. There's gameplay. You don't want to slow things down too much. Everything's got a pace. But with certain characters, they really allowed me to really embellish on those traits, and he was definitely one where we had so much fun. I didn't even know. I think there was one line. We do know the number 1632. And I was just throwing all sorts, and I was making them laugh, in the booth next door and stuff. And they was like, "Oh my god, that's so funny. That's just the weirdest intonation, like, inflections." And so, yeah, let's keep that. That's great. And so, and that's how it kind of just kept going. There were a few of us that, we over the years we've built a good range in our vocal abilities and characters, and they just kept throwing us new characters as the game progressed, and we'd all put our voice in the hat and see what was what stuck and what people liked, and Peeves came along as well, and he was a tough one. Peeves, I think Peeves was one of the hardest because he had to be annoying, but not where you have to take your headphones off annoying,
Yeah.
So, and of course everything's a rhyme, so everything had to have this sort of rhythm and mischief about it. Um, and I immediately thought with Peeves that he was like this antagonist in the school play yard. I'm gonna get you. No, you're not. Yes, I am. So it was very much, oh gosh, he is just going to annoy people, but in the right way.
Mhm.
So if you hate Peeves, that's probably a good thing.
Well, it does show that the character has a lasting effect. Even the chat here, for example, Peeves was hilarious, scared me a few times.
Yes, there you
And
go.
Corey said Peeves is definitely one of my favourites. So
Ah,
the
there you go.
lasting effects, but definitely in the right way. So
Yeah,
definitely
that's
hitting all
right.
the right note.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was again very fun to record him, um, and yeah, he's as I say, a very nice surprise that was, because you never know how characters are going to hit, and he hit in all the right ways and wrong ways.
Through your TikTok, you've shared some pretty incredible behind the scenes footage of the motion capture on
Oh
Hogwarts
yeah,
Legacy. Is
yeah.
that the first time that you've done motion capture?
Yeah, it was actually. Yeah. Yes, it was. And it's fantastic. It's just such an awesome experience because for the most part, voice acting is very insular. Because they only need to capture the audio, they want to capture it nice and clean. So they capture each actor's performance individually, even though if you're in a scene with another character, you'll be recording them on separate days. And you may or may not have a director feed you the other character's lines to feed you in. So to then land up on a motion capture, a PCAP stage, performance capture stage with all the other actors, and they're capturing our voice and our performance at the same time. It was just so great. And we got to do wand training.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
Here's an interesting thing, right? So I actually got, let me just, I'll just move. Oh, Sir Nicholas. I actually got this wand made. This is Victor Rookwood's wand. So when we started filming with wands, obviously they didn't need to be that elaborate. It was a stick with a fluorescent sphere on the end. That was it. But what was really interesting was how everyone naturally had a wand movement. Now, if you look at all the Harry Potter films, everyone holds a wand differently. And wields it differently when there's casting spells. So it was very interesting when we all got just given basically a stick as our wand. It was amazing how everyone, I suppose it's a bit like cutlery. You know how everyone has a unique way of holding cutlery, and some people you think, God, how do you eat like that? Yeah, it was the same thing with the wands, as I'm sure it would be the same thing with a lightsaber. You know,
Yeah.
but there's this natural instinct that all of a sudden, you're just casting it in a certain way, you're holding it. And I looked around and I thought, yeah, most of us are doing this very differently. And that was just a natural thing. And I really noticed that. But we did have a guy there to advise us on spell casting and how we should be using them. But pretty much he was like, yeah, you guys have got the hang of this already. And it was that was really cool. That was a real pinch me moment.
Was there sort of energy from everybody in the room sort of bouncing off each other, where you've all just been
Ah,
transported to a 7-year-old given a wand and everyone's going,
it was giddy. Yeah, it was so good. And the thing is with motion capture, there's a huge technical aspect to it, which you have to remember. It's not just okay, rolling, speed, sound, and action. There's all sorts of things. You have to do this T pose before and after. So it sets your digital character in a T pose. So your arms go out. It captures you, and then sound, rolling, bomb, and then you go and scene. And then at the end of every scene, cut. You all have to go back to a neutral T pose. Well, we were so giddy. The amount of times everyone's like, "Sorry, oh, back to T," because we just, you can't help but get caught up in the world and the scene and stuff. So it was
yeah.
really good.
I think if you don't pinch yourself really and really take it in, then what
Yeah.
you're really doing it for in that sort of respect, you've got
Yes.
the appreciation for where you are, I suppose, is just
Yeah, it's so
incredible.
true. No matter what you do in life, you really need to just take that moment, whatever it is. Doesn't even have to be in entertainment, whatever it is. If you get to that point where you think, wow, yeah, I passed that test, or I passed that exam, or I'm driving this truck, or, I'm owning this shop, or I'm working in this shop, and you really need to take stock and just take a moment. It doesn't have to be long, but just recognize it and just, I mean, I was just like, wow, I am so privileged right now. This is
Mhm.
incredible. And I wanted to be present and recognize it then, not, oh yeah, wow, boy, we didn't know how good it was back then. I didn't want to kind of leave with that sentiment.
Yeah, I think it's a really good way of looking at it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Uh, any other franchises that would be a dream franchise to work on? And if so, a character from that franchise, what would your dream character be to play?
Wow. I mean, I love Marvel, the Marvel universe. I mean, I love Korg. I know Taika Waititi, nails that character, and he's a great director and writer. But something in that vein, where I mean, it's very comedic. That whole performance of Korg. Um, I would love a similar character like that. That, yes, can go into battle. That does look like they can take care of themselves, but has this sort of shy, vulnerable side to them. And Star Wars. I was very lucky to be in the Lego Star Wars, but that's a franchise I think that is always very near and dear to me. So again, I like all the sidekicks. It's not like I want to. I love the sidekick role. I think those are really fun, because obviously a lot of the time the sidekicks are the comedic relief too. So I think it would be lovely to play some sort of a droid or something in a Star Wars franchise. Um,
It's a very British thing, isn't it, to be the comedic relief in a big franchise
yes,
like Marvel or Star Wars,
yes, that's
droids
right.
especially.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you know, I obviously I grew up on British comedy, and I still think for me, it resonates the hardest. I mean, seeing people like Matt Berry perform, and it's just there's just
It's
something to
fantastic.
it. Just yes, Clem Fandango.
Then
I can hear you,
Fandango.
so yeah, there is something, so that, I mean, I think that's why for me, if you'd have asked me that before working on Hogwarts Legacy, it definitely would have been, Harry Potter at the top of the list, because I mean, it's set in Scotland, it's got such an eclectic cast of Brits in there, who, when you look at that, you can't imagine anyone else doing that role.
Mm.
You really can't. So yeah, but so I'm, obviously I am very honored to be a part of this new chapter.
I mean, there is potential, as HBO are doing a sort of reboot, aren't they? Of
Yeah,
Harry
that's going to
Potter.
be so interesting, because I do feel there is more story there for sure. And I think, when you have such rich characters and an incredible environment as J.K. Rowling created, I think there's great scope for fleshing those characters' story arcs out and diving deeper into the world. And of course there were characters and things, that a lot of things from the books that were left out, which I'm sure fans alike are looking forward to seeing. I kind of hope it happens. I know there's a lot of rumors, and I think things are moving towards it. But for me, I definitely would love to see it. I definitely would love to be a part of it. I'll be for sure trying to throw my name in the hat, in the sorting hat. Better be me. Uh, so yeah, and I've always said the same for Star Wars too. I know, they're branching out into all these other characters and worlds, but I would truthfully sit down and watch, a fleshed out New Hope and um, Empire and Return of the Jedi. I think in the right hands, it could, be really, really good. I know a lot of people are like, oh, don't touch them, leave them. No, we're not touching them. We're leaving them.
Mm.
That's them. That's Harrison Ford. We know this is just a new thing. And, we're going to do, we're going to just expand on this. We're not going to try and compete head to head. But I think, it could be quite good, quite interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if they would do that with Star Wars. Actually, be interesting to see. It's also
Yeah.
quite scary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when any of these big franchises, and that's why we worked on this game, Hogwarts Legacy, for 6-7 years. We knew it was going to be something special, but you never know how good something's going to be, until the players and the fans get a hold of it. And it was just it was still a surprise at its scope of success across the board. People loved it as a
Mhm.
good game. It ticked all the boxes and what people wanted from a Wizarding World experience. And I think the amazing people over at Avalanche went above and beyond. I mean, I know for a fact that there are so many fans of the Wizarding World who work there. You couldn't do
Mhm.
it with people that weren't.
Yeah,
You had to have that level of enthusiasm and passion and knowledge. The knowledge, they were so true to the lore of the Wizarding World. But I think it was very smart to set it in the 1890s too, because in a way that gave us a little bit of a blank slate,
yeah,
as well. So it's very smart people.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, your videos on your TikTok, a lot
Yes.
of them are based around the comments in your comment section.
Yes.
Um, you don't only just make videos based on your comments, you also respond to a lot of comments, considering the amount of followers that you have on TikTok, even
Yes.
sending out merch, including the lovely print behind me.
Hey, there you go. Look at
Um,
that. Excellent.
yeah, lovely. Um, and you even used a paint pen, so a real pro. Yeah. um, it seems to me that you are tailor-made to appear at Comic Cons. Have you
Ah,
have you appeared at a con before? And is it something you'd be interested in now
l
you're part of so many
yeah,
franchises?
I did a long time ago. But I haven't recently. I know the Comic Con world has just blown up. It's expanded beyond belief. There's so many now. But equally, I think there's a lot of. I know they've sort of delved back into the 80s and 90s. There's a great sort of resurgence of popularity with shows from those periods in time. So yeah, I've literally just this year put my name. I keep saying that, my name in the hat. But I have, and I'm hoping to come out to especially some Wizarding World ones. But I can always tag on, Warhammer and Call of Duty and whatnot on the back of that. But I'm sort of very much focused on the Wizarding World ones, and there's so many of them. So I have somebody that's diligently working through those. So yeah, watch this space. I hope to come out and meet everyone in person, and it's a great extension then from TikTok.
Yeah.
Of people coming out to see me. Hope in that way they'll at least recognize me. They won't be like, which one? I have no idea. I haven't even heard his voice. So that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there'll be many people in the chat very happy with that, because I know that a lot of my audience are big Comic-Con goers and autograph and photo guys. So yeah, they'll be buzzing with that.
Great.
Which brings us nicely onto a nice little section. So anybody in the chat, if anyone wants to ask any questions, please fire them away. I do see one from Mr. Coombsy. So Coombsy's asked, what voice actor would you most like to work with?
Oh wow, that's a great question. I think it would be an incredible experience. I worked on a show called Hero Factory, which had an incredible cast. Tom Kenny, SpongeBob, Mark Hamill was in that. Henry Winkler, John Schneider, Jennifer Coolidge. It was just this laundry list. But I would love to be. I would love to be in the same room as Mark Hamill, playing opposite him as the Joker. I think that would be so cool. Yeah, I know. So that would be a wish list. We at one point we had the same agency, and Mark and I would cross paths. We'd go in auditioning for stuff, and that at that time, remember this was like 2010. So Star Wars hadn't been rebooted, so Mark was still very much a good working voice actor. So yeah, he'd come in and audition for stuff and meet with the agents and stuff, and he was really nice. So we'd cross paths a couple of times, and I'd have to keep the fanboy in me, like, easy. Hey Mark, what's up? Okay, you can let go now. Can't breathe. So yeah, he'd definitely be up on the list. I would also. I'm a very big fan of Taika Waititi. I think he's just a phenomenal actor. It'd be amazing again to be opposite him in a room recording. Yeah. Those are the two that would definitely stand out.
Yeah, Taika Waititi. A lot of people don't even realize the amount of work that he's done.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Even when it comes to, as you mentioned before, with Matt Berry, What We Do in the Shadows. That's Birth Child. It's not very well known actually in the UK.
No.
I've realized that. I absolutely adore that show. Matt, it's fantastic. The range of dialects from the actors. It's almost like voice acting within the show.
Yes. So many distinct characters. And I mean, Matt Berry, just his pronunciation and that alone is. What did he just say? I've never heard it said like that. It's just like, what? Yeah. So funny.
Yeah. Harry has asked, any advice for budding actors?
Yeah, gosh, this is a good question. We're going through a real transition right now. Hollywood has its foot on the brake at the moment, and I'm sure everyone out there is starting to feel the effects of AI, and it's here, and it is going to, become very apparent in a lot of workplaces. I think what the first it was us. We had the SAG-AFTRA strikes last year, which part of that was negotiating AI contracts. So that aside, as budding actors, I always encourage young actors now to start to write and perform their own stuff. And when I started out, there was no YouTube, there was no platforms to do that. But I hired a crew and we shot some stuff for my presenting, and it was all edited and put together. So even back then, I realized, okay, I need to show people what I can do. And I can't just tell them, I need to show them. So I would say one of the most powerful tools right now is TikTok. And I exclusively say TikTok because it is definitely the lion's share of eyeballs out there. And I know the industry are looking on TikTok. I know they are. I've even booked work now from TikTok on video games. So I would highly recommend that you come up and definitely start trying to write your own material too, because in that way you'll get stuff that you want to do. A lot of actors always say, oh, this was the perfect role for me, and I just knew as soon first page I thought, wow, this character's for me. But that doesn't happen all the time, you know. So especially now, if you're writing stuff, you will cater it to you. Maybe you like more dramatic stuff, and that's fine too. It doesn't all have to be funny. It can be profound. It can just be out and out entertaining. But I see a lot of people now who've done really, really well on TikTok just by writing, and they do their own. What's great about it is they play every character.
Yeah.
They play opposite each other as mum and dad, brothers, shop assistant and customer. Like, you can just play everything. So out of the gate, without getting into too much other stuff, I would say that's going to be one of your most powerful allies right now is using this platform to, and build your own fan base. See, the industry now, they're very, especially music and entertainment, they're very much guided. They want to see you already successful and have a fan base.
Yeah.
Because it takes certain amount of the risk out for them. So that's what they're looking for. They're looking for, wow, this person's got a fan base. And obviously sometimes it's like, oh, I totally get it. Or sometimes it's like, wow, that's a really niche fan base, but it's a fan base, and it's showing that person, is connecting with their audience. And now you hear it more than ever. All of these things now that we see, all the big movies and everything, they all have a TikTok campaign, an Instagram campaign. Part of their contract now is to do social media.
Yeah.
It's not a case of, hey, I just thought this would be cool for the fans. No, it's part of the advertising budget, the media budget, the social media budget. It's all part of it. That's why we're seeing all these celebrities now on the red carpets and doing all these interviews, because it's all now part of the how the industry's now pivoting with social media, and it's a huge part. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, are you happy with that, Harry?
How's that, Harry?
He must be. He must be.
Harry's like, yeah, that's okay.
Touching on that social media side, I'd like to touch upon an important topic briefly. In recent times, especially with social media, I've noticed across the industry that a lot of people are coming forward and being a lot more open about their mental health and mental health issues that they do have. Even last week in the UK, Richarlison, a footballer for Tottenham, spoke about how he struggled mentally with losing games, and how that's really affected him. Are there any challenges that you faced as a voice actor throughout your career, and how you've overcome those, or how you spoke to people about, and etc.?
Yeah, it's a great sort of springboard of what we've just said and the advice that I've given. Even maybe 10 years ago, this wasn't such a big thing, social media, and once you put your stuff out there publicly as yourself, like, it's one thing to be in something playing a character that you are behind, and then it's up to you if you talk about it or you don't. And some actors are very private, and that's fair enough, and some a bit more public. So you have to take everything with a pinch of salt once you decide, okay, I'm going to start putting my craft out there, whether you're an artist, with paints and brushes or anything creative, once you're saying, hey, this is me, okay, you're always going to have people out there that don't necessarily bond with you, right? And that's fine. Ignore that. That's all. And sad. It's a sad reality because that's always probably going to be there. And if you spend too much time focusing on that side, on the hate, it's a very dark place to go to. And I
Hmm.
get it. I don't even know how, you know, kids get through school these days with social media because
Yeah.
me, you had your group of mates and maybe your class knew that you know, messed up with the teacher or something and, will get in detention or something. But now, the whole world can find out. So I think you have to be very careful to some degree what you decide to put out to the world. You want to
Hmm.
put, you want to take stock in your best interests. You can't, it's funny, you can't always think like, oh, I had no idea somebody was going to pick up on that. I mean, people have made fun of my glasses. They make fun of the way I look. You look like a skeleton. I get it all. I get it all. And I laugh at it all because it's just some person's, first impression. And
Yeah.
I'm out there for the people that genuinely enjoy my content. I'm not out there to win everybody over.
Yeah.
And so I think, social media is playing a really, really important role now of allowing people this platform to share their experiences, good and bad. I've never spoken about this before publicly. Um, I lost my brother to suicide last year, and that was in part mainly to do with COVID. And it's a very, very difficult subject to talk about. To certainly, I don't feel I'm in any position to give advice. But I do know this, and that is you have to talk to someone. You have to reach out. And that's something my brother didn't do. Didn't do with me, didn't do with my mum, even his close friends. And when it's too late, it's too late. And so I really admire people that are taking to social media with these really important issues, mental health issues, especially somebody like that, like a footballer, where their influence on the younger generation is huge, just massive. But they're so focused on the footballer and look at all the games we've won and look at all the money and all that. And they have no idea. And I think I touched upon this earlier. Until you've tried something, you have no idea. Like
Hmm.
you see a comedian on stage. Who would ever thought we would have said goodbye to Robin Williams this way?
Absolutely.
When you saw him on stage, he was this top of the world, funniest guy on the planet, just unbelievable. And yet, this broken person off
Hmm.
stage. But that's what made him so great when he was on stage,
Hmm.
because that was his medicine, you know. But it's those times when you're not on stage that that person is really broken. And so my only sort of advice to anyone is please, please make sure that you talk to someone. Let
Hmm.
someone know what's really going on. And there is no shame in that at all. But if you don't and you bottle it up and you try and deal with it yourself, nobody can do that. There's a great saying, who's packing your parachute? Right? When we jump and make these leaps in life, who's packing your parachute? You can't do it on your own. You
Hmm.
can't. Nobody in this world has ever got anywhere on their own. Ever. You know, behind every great man is a great woman, or vice versa. There are so many phrases that we've used over the years, and it's so true. Nobody gets there on their own. and nobody works through their dark times on their own. And if they do, it's never a good end result because you
Hmm.
just can't. It's too much. It's too much to have on your shoulders. So, um, whichever way you can do it, but please, talk to someone, find someone. So yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting times that we're in because, the COVID, the effects of COVID have not gone away.
No,
I think
no,
it's all smoke and mirrors, but it's there and it's still seeping through. And that's just COVID. That's not what's happened since COVID, which, if you've even got half an ear on the news, it's just wow.
mm,
So just dealing with the world events is one thing, let alone your own personal and I have this is a really tough industry to be in, because you're constantly putting yourself forward. You have to get used to no. No is a huge part of this career path. It's a huge part, and you must never take it personally because what you might not be right for one thing, you're perfect for the next.
yeah,
Or you think, "Okay, that's a no. Well, I had fun doing it." So that, I can definitely say, "Yep, I'm happy with that." And if that's not right for you, that's fine. And you just let it go. You have to start just letting things go. And it's a new day tomorrow. There's another new opportunity come in. Let me focus on that. And you forget about these things that have happened because they're in the past. And I think my motto now is I'm really, with what's happened to me personally and the people I've lost, I'm really just taking things day to day. And it says it's easier said than done, and it has to be almost like um uh sort of a religious thing you do every day. You may pray every day, but saying to yourself, I can't control the past and I can't control the future. I'm here now. You know, I'm healthy, and you can start once you start looking at the things you are grateful for, all of a sudden you really do start changing, and you just think, no, I'm not. I don't have to think about that. That's in the future. I can't control that, and I don't want to control it. Because if I start trying to control the future, I could be upsetting all sorts of things that could come into my life. So
yeah,
it's really how you are now and really focusing on what kind of, energy you're putting out there as a person, as a father, as a brother, as a friend, you know. And that's, going back to the work that I've done. That's why, it's lovely that I can be at least a little part of somebody else's experience of seeking joy and escapism and fantasy and stuff, because I think it's very, very important that we have these opportunities to escape. It really crushes me when I hear people say, oh, you spend all your time on video games. It's like, you know what? That's what makes them happy. That's their escapism. A lot of people make a ton of money playing video games, right? So it's here, it's part of our society, and and it's wonderful escapism. And as we mentioned earlier with Warzone and that, where you had the multiplayer option, and there's a real sense of community, and you can't take that away from people. That's it's really just it's not fair to do. So you
mhm,
know I just embrace all of that now, and being able to reach people on TikTok and hear their stories, and for us to chat now, it really paints the bigger picture, because there's always a bigger picture to all of this. Whatever decisions we make in life, there's always this bigger picture.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing. I'm so sorry for the losses that you've
Thank you.
the last couple of years, but
Yeah,
yeah, thank you very much for sharing. It's really resonated with the listeners and viewers.
great.
Um, Mason, thank you for sharing, and Harry said
Thanks, Meg.
dollars advice. So yeah, thank you very much, Jason.
Yeah,
It's
pleasure.
really really moving. And absolutely with what you're saying, I've always said consistency
Yes.
beats, and you can be the hardest working person for a day, but if you're consistent and you just stick at being a good person or being even just being a good human,
Yeah.
and just being consistent,
Yeah.
life can change.
Yeah.
We're big advocates on this channel and in and around this community, actually, which is a really good thing to see. Everyone's very, very open, and people aren't scared to reach out and ask if anybody's dealing with anything. They're quite good at picking up on hints
Yeah.
rather than just letting people suffer in silence, because I know what it's like. We're programmed as humans. We're proud people to
Yeah.
not tell people our problems. So if you just check in on people every now and again, it can be a lonely, lonely world. So if you have the option to ask people, just do so. There might be nothing wrong, but
Right.
just
And
letting
just the
them know you're
littlest
there.
thing. It doesn't have to be a big gesture, just a little thing. We live in a world now where communication has been so easy, and yet we still don't lean into it enough. Just a text of, I was thinking about you today. You don't even have to say, how are you? Just say,
Mm,
how I was thinking about you today, and it made me smile. Or I was thinking about, how are you? Hey, have you seen, Ghostbusters movie? Like, just a small gesture, where people sort of, you sort of clash with a friend. Oh my God, I was just thinking about you the other day. And you kind of think, oh, okay, well, you could have maybe just to let me know, that would have been nice too, you know? So
yeah,
as I say, when you have that inspired thought, and that's what it is, I act on it. I act on inspired thought. And if somebody comes into your head, I think they're coming into your head for a reason, because we all think if we don't hear from people, everyone's fine. Oh, I haven't heard from Jason for well, he must be fine. How do we, you don't know. And more
yeah,
often than not, you're not, even because we have a presence now, on social media, we've seen time and time again that some of these people's lives are completely fabricated, and that is a persona they have for TikTok. But they've got all their own issues, they've got all their own concerns and worries. So it's just getting things into perspective so that you don't get falsely led down a path and think, oh yeah, that's what I want. And then, maybe you work 10 years to get there and then realize this isn't what I thought it was at all. So I think this transparency that we have now, that's really coming around, because we used to all think, oh yeah, look at the guy, with the Lamborghini and bumper. But now I think we're definitely gravitating away from this Hollywood lifestyle, and we want to hear from the grounded people that are out there, that are just wearing their heart on their sleeve, and doing all sorts of interesting jobs and work. That's what we want to see. I watched the pool guy on TikTok who goes and washes swimming pools. He's brilliant. I love watching his stuff. It's so cathartic to see him working on a swimming pool.
yeah. Hot
You know?
tubs, blow up hot tubs. Who would have thought it?
Right, exactly. Exactly. So, it's whatever, raises that serotonin, whatever takes you out of that thought process for even a minute, is healthy stuff. Obviously, I'm not advocating we all stay indoors and just stay on screens. I'm a huge one for, still talking face to face, with
touching
friends,
grass.
touching grass. Yes, earthing as well. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting last 10-15 minutes or so, actually, quite eye-opening. I hope that, if anything, people watching and in the chat can take something away from, especially the last 15 minutes. It's been really, really interesting.
Mhm.
Believe it or not, we're coming to the end. Time has absolutely flown by.
It has.
I'd like to say a massive thank you to you, Jason, for
Oh, thanks,
coming
Dino.
on and being my first guest of the series. I'm beyond grateful for your time, insights, and for what you've shared. It's really, really meaningful. So
Oh, pleasure.
yeah. Hopefully we can do this again, maybe
Yeah.
after Hogwarts Legacy 2.
What? Wow. Fingers crossed. I haven't heard anything, but I hope so. I think if there's enough people that say, "Come on, we want more," they will. I hope so.
Yeah, enough people tweet. Nice tweets though. Nice tweets.
Yeah, good tweets. Good
Yeah.
owl mail. We'll accept owl mail.
If you haven't already, please make sure you scan the QR code on screen and head over to Jason's TikTok to catch up on all the latest projects. And you never know, he might reply to a comment and do a video on one of your comments.
Yes.
So make sure you do. Thank you all for watching and tuning in with myself and Jason this evening. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please do leave a big thumbs up and subscribe. And don't forget to join me next week at Monday at 9 p.m, where we'll be joined by actor Ryan Wembridge. So that'll be quite interesting. I've known Ryan for a long time, so it'll be interesting to talk to him.
Brilliant.
Now, all there's left for me to do is ask, if he doesn't mind, if Jason could sign us off in a character of his choosing.
Ah, yes. Well then, let's see. Interesting. Very interesting. Yes. A bit older than the others, aren't you? Well, Dino Joe, the only thing I want to say to you is, live the unwritten.
See you later, guys.